Hello and welcome. We're on day 10 of our Course in Miracles study group. For those of y'all online on the recording, we're on page 28, chapter 2 under fear and conflict. And I'll leave in the description box down below. There's a free online version that you can follow along from. And if you click on that, then you'll just go to text. And then I think then you just go to chapter 2 and you keep scrolling until you find in bold letters fear and conflict. So I'll leave that link down below. Yeah, and I guess I should introduce if this is your first time joining us, we're reading A Course in Miracles, which is a channeled text. Helen Schumann channeled this in like the 60s or 70s, I think. And it was Jesus coming through. Yeah, and of course, just take it or leave it. We're just talking about our insights and what we receive from it. You don't have to agree with everything in the book. You can think for yourself. So yeah, and if you have any comments, you can always put them in the comment box down below. I'd love to hear and read y'all's thoughts as well as we read along. So I will start the first paragraph. And I did the same thing as I did last time, where I read it first and then sat with it for a little while so that I could warm up my brain to the language.
Operations.
Because it kind of takes a while to get into it.
Totally.
Every time. Okay, so let's start here. Being afraid seems to be involuntary, something beyond your own control. Yet I have said already that only constructive acts should be involuntary. My control can take over everything that does not matter, while my guidance can direct everything that does, if you so choose. Fear cannot be controlled by me, but it can be self-controlled. Fear prevents me from giving you my control. The presence of fear shows that you have raised body thoughts to the level of the mind. This removes them from my control and makes you feel personally responsible for them. This is an obvious confusion of levels. So from this paragraph, the first thing that I sat with for a little while was like this confusion of levels, because that's something that always like confuses me. I'm like, what are these levels that he keeps talking about? And I did look up like a little bit online just of like trying to get up different insights of like what this means specifically in this book. And so the levels would be like from the body to the mind, or we can think of like the bottom chakras and the higher chakras, like our fears for safety and our fears for insecurities and things like this are from our like bottom 3 chakras, and they're what like ground us into our physical form. And if they're not healed, we can misinterpret the signals from these chakras, and they can come across fearful, like, oh, what, I'm never going to have enough money, it's not safe to be on earth, it's not safe to be alive, or I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. These all come from like an unhealed like bottom 3 chakras that anchor us into the body. And so the top 3 chakras are the chakras that connect us to spirit, and then the heart chakra in the middle kind of brings the two together and is like the center point for them all. And so once I understood that a little bit better, I was able to see that when we are afraid, it can feel like we are not making the choice to be afraid. It's just something that's happening. We are scared and we don't know what to do. But if you can go a little bit deeper within yourself, you'll see that you're choosing to believe these limitations that come from the bottom 3 chakras. And then that kind of manifests as fear. And when we choose to be afraid rather than just observing the fear, being like, okay, I'm from my heart, from the center, I'm going to observe that I'm afraid, but I'm not going to allow it to be true. I'm not going to allow it to control my actions. I'm just going to observe that there's fear in my body. Um, and when we do that, this guidance is able to come through more clearly. Whereas whenever we cling on to the fear that arises from our body, which is the lower level, then it's harder to hear the guidance from the higher realms that comes in through the top three chakras. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. That's kind
It,
of what
it
I
makes
got from
sense
this.
too with the part that says, yet I have said already that only constructive acts should be involuntary.
Mm,
That makes a lot of sense there too, because it's like the constructive act is involuntary. Like moving forward is like the spirit moving through you. But then it says being afraid seems to be involuntary beyond your control, but it's saying like, no, it's actually fear is within your control.
yeah, it's like the choice to believe the fearful thoughts in the body. I went on like a little rant about the the bottom and the top chakras, but that kind of just helped me to better understand whenever he talks about level confusion. So,
Yeah, and that helps so much too, because I'm very visual. So it's like to see the stacking, and then like the heart in the very center. Like,
mhm.
I don't know. I'm very visual, so that helped a lot.
I something that really helped me yesterday was this visual of an hourglass.
Yeah.
And it's like the top of the hourglass is God, is the divine. And then right here, before it drops into the bottom, which is like a inverted thing, is like a portal that's taking you from the divine into the inverted reflection of the divine. And so like the bottom half of the hourglass is like our bottom chakras and our earthly worries and everything. And then the pinpoint, the portal in between the two sides is like that still point in the heart. Um yeah, I received that yesterday and ever since I can't stop thinking about it. And it's
Yeah.
like not attaching yourself to the bottom portion of the hourglass, trying to view it from the portal pinpoint in the middle, because then you're closer to the higher perspective from the divine at the top of the hourglass.
Yeah, I love that. And then if you also flip it on its side, then that makes you that bottom point. And then if you're like shining light through a prism,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that will go through, and then there's that flip of the
Mm-hmm.
projection. So yeah, kind of like using that and then like aligning with the horizontal as well is how I'm guessing you would like create that reflection of like reality around you.
Mm, that's true. And it's like the bottom part is like the illusion of all
Yeah.
that is. Like, because we have all this material, we have all these different places in the world and in the universe we can travel to, and it's infinite, but it's like the illusion of
Yeah.
infinity. Whereas whenever you come to the portal in the middle, you then receive this almost like there's nothing there, because whenever you're down at the bottom part of the hourglass and you look up and see the pinpoint, it looks like nothingness. It looks like there's nothing there, and so you're afraid to release the illusion because you're like, oh, but then what am I going to do when I release the illusion? Go to the pinpoint where there's nothing. But what you can't see until you take that leap of faith and release the illusion and come up to the pinpoint is that on the other side is the true all that is at the top, and the bottom was like the illusion of all that is. But and you just can't see that until you get to the pinpoint, and that's the leap of faith, is like trusting that when you release the illusions and go to the nothingness in the portal pinpoint, that once you get there you'll receive the true all that is at the top.
Yeah. I love that. I love adding all of the geometry to it. Because I'm very into like the math and geometry of it all. I don't all of this like nuancy, like languagey stuff is kind of hard for me. But it's
Hmm.
like once you draw it in these geometrical ways, then it actually makes sense to me.
Yeah, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like I agree with you. This book is kind of, we have to create our own little.
Yeah. It's a lot, but
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I
a lot.
like it. I like it because it gives me the opportunity to see like a varying perspective of something that is like so dense, and then being able to bounce off and then like, okay, let's like bring this down to like real life. Like what's really happening here?
Yeah, like what's going on? I agree.
Okay. I'm gonna see if I can jump into this.
Yeah, we're warming up.
I do not foster level confusion, but you must choose to correct it. You would not excuse insane behavior on your part by saying you could not help it. Why should you condone insane thinking? There is a confusion here that you would do well to look at clearly. You may believe that you are responsible for what you do, but not for what you think. The truth is that you are responsible for what you think because it is only at this level that you can exercise choice. What you do comes from what you think. You cannot separate yourself from truth by giving autonomy to behavior. This is controlled by me automatically as soon as you place what you think under my guidance. Whenever you're afraid, it's a sure sign that you have allowed your mind to miscreate and have not allowed me to guide it. Um, I think that goes perfectly into what you're saying about the hourglass, because it's, it like when you think about like the axial tilt and what it takes to really like the groundedness that it would take to line up perfectly in that hourglass point is like that vibrational sway of like, I'm going to be present in this right now. I'm in control of my thoughts. And then, flipping it on its side, because there's always both, then that would still create like that center point, but it's in that perfect clarity right there in the center that is going to create like the reflection of reality that you're then interacting with. So if you kind of miss that center point from the hourglass, then the when you come at it from this direction, it's like you can either go this way or this way, depending on where you met it at this point. I don't know if that makes
That
sense.
makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like the center point is like clarity, connection to the divine, peace. And then whenever you like go at it from different angles, it's like being trapped in the past or being trapped in the future, either depression or anxiety. And so then when you're in a state of anxiety or in a state of depression, you're making decisions out of your center. And so then your world will reflect back to you the state of being you were in when you made the decision from anxiety rather than choosing to stay in the center and then take action from there. Because then your reality will reflect back to you your connection to presence and the divine.
Yeah. And if all of this is, if all the spirit is just waves of energy, and if all we are is like vessels for energy to move through us, even thinking about the word depression, that's like, it's a compression of the energetic wave. It's a compression of that. So it can't flow freely through.
Mm.
But there are points in life where that's necessary. You do have to go through like that depression and compression of the wave in order to like come back to the center. It's like it's all part of it.
Absolutely. It's like as far as you're willing to dive into the depths of what you're moving through is like the higher you're going to rise up out of it. It's like that saying, like, die well. When you're going through something that feels like a death, die well. Don't let it crumble you. Don't crumble under the weight of this death. Choose to rise up through it. Not pretending that it's not happening, seeing it's happening, feeling the emotions, crying when you need to cry, screaming into a pillow when you need to scream into a pillow, but then standing back up, remembering who you are, remembering why you came here, choosing to ask the divine, show me how to see this. Whoever, source, universe, God, show me how to see this. Show me how to move through this. Show me what to do. Show me what to say. It's in our darkest moments when we build the most faith and trust in the divine. It's through that compression that we are truly turning into a diamond within, because we're building our relationship to the divine.
Yeah, and if you think about compression also in terms of gravity, and then like what would the opposing force of gravity be? It would be levity. So it's like to take on the entire the weight and the gravity of it all, and then to, you know, kind of circle around in that for a while. And then the levity is like, you know, bringing the human aspect to it and bringing joy to it and bringing humor to it. Because, you know, depression is kind of funny sometimes. Like it's not it's not always funny, but when you look back at your most depressed moments, it's like, wow, that was really funny. So,
I agree. I think that humor, like, I really believe humor is like one of the highest vibrational states of being. So even when you're going through something like really hard, if you can just bring a little bit of humor to it, it'll immediately like raise your vibration. Not because you're trying to get out of it, but just so that you can see it from a different perspective.
yeah, if you look at it from the other perspective and you're looking down at yourself, you're like, why? Why are
What's
you
going
making
on?
such a big deal about this?
That's so funny. I love that. Okay, we're on the third paragraph. It is pointless to believe that controlling the outcome of misthought can result in healing. When you are fearful, you have chosen wrongly. That is why you feel responsible for it. You must change your mind, not your behavior. And this is a matter of willingness. You do not need guidance except at the mind level. Correction belongs only at the level where change is possible. Change does not mean anything at the symptom level where it cannot work. I think this is speaking to not attempting to change from the external world. Like when things aren't going our way, when we're receiving a reflection that we don't necessarily want, um, rather than trying to like manipulate and force change in the external world, it's about going within first and seeing, okay, what is within me that is causing this reflection to appear? Because our physical reality really is just simply a reflection of our internal world. And we can be in a state of denial to that and play the victim to that and not want to believe that. And that's fine if that's where we're at, but we're just going to continue to get that same reflection over and over again until we choose to go deeper, and until we choose to go within and courageously face whatever it is inside of us that is asking to be seen. Because I think that whenever our external is reflecting something back to us, like lack or disrespect or whatever it may be, there's like a part of us that wants to be seen by us. It wants to be held and heard and comforted and soothed by us. It doesn't want you to like try and control and manipulate the external world, because then you're still not seeing yourself. You're seeing the external world. You're going outside of yourself for something. And the only true change can come from within. And so I think this is just speaking to like not being afraid of our mind, not being afraid of our emotions, being willing to go to the depth within us to create that change externally.
That makes a lot of sense also with the like the visual of the like reflection going this way. So it's like when your reflection is not like what you want it to be, it's not going to be, you don't change it by being over here trying to change it by being over here in the self, because that's like what is creating that reflection. And when you're seeing something that you're not really liking, it's like you created that, you know, we all created that. So it's really just the acknowledgement of like, oh, I am in control. I am the one with the power, and I did create this. And there's a part of me that, you know, needed to have this experience. Even though I don't like it, there's a part of me that does. And not judging yourself for that. Because as soon as you see it, that's when it changes. You know, it's not like I'm gonna force my way into like making this reflection change. It's like as soon as you see like, oh, I did create this, I take ownership of this, and I'm not judging myself for it. I'm, you know, it is what it is. And yeah, you just have to see it.
I love that. That's so true. I feel like oftentimes we get so stuck in this, like, I don't know what to call it, like this perpetual feeling like that we're perpetually needing to heal or fix ourselves because
Mhm.
there's something wrong with us. But that's just not true. There's nothing wrong with us. And yes, healing is a lifelong journey, but it doesn't mean that it's because there's something that you did wrong. It's just like what you said, you're just bringing your attention to something, and that's all you have to do. There's no like grueling labor that needs to be done. And sometimes we can get really like confused about that and feel like we need to do something to fix it. And that's when we kind of lead to burnout or constant exhaustion, is when we feel like we need to do all this grueling labor to fix ourselves. Um, yeah, I love that. Just bringing our attention to it, and
And
it
if
kind of dissolves it.
everything in the reflection was like the way that we wanted it to be, would we ever evolve? You know, like why there's a point to it, and that if everything was the way that we wanted, then that's complacency, and energy can't move in complacency. So
That's true. I love that. And like that's the reason we came to Earth ultimately, was to like alchemize the entire planet. Like the true us, there's the true us has is outside of the realm of the earth. The real us is home with God. But we chose to come down into density and to kind of enmesh ourselves into the frequency of the planet to help transform the frequency of the planet. So when we're moving through all of these traumas and dense emotions and thoughts, it's not because there's anything wrong with who we are that we need to fix. It's like we saw a planet that needed healing, that needed help. And from our pure state, home with God, we said, you know, I would love to go down into that dense reality and help alchemize that planet. And so then we entered into, is this making sense? Because then we entered into something that needed to be alchemized. It was never actually us. And so when we're moving through density, I always try to view it as like, I'm helping alchemize this whole entire world by facing my fears and moving through anxiety and all of these things. I'm not just doing it for me, I'm doing it for like the betterment of the entire planet. And that's why we all came here. And so it helps a little bit to remove ourselves from the equation of what's wrong and see ourselves as that like pure state of innocence and purity and light that chose to morph itself into an illusion so that it could ultimately alchemize and raise the consciousness on the planet. So everything we're moving through isn't actually us, it's the planet.
And I love that too in terms of like this last week. So it was like daylight savings last week or whatever. And I don't live in a reality where I'm like bound by time schedules. And so the whole like changing of the time, it doesn't normally affect me. Um, and anyone who has animals, like when feeding time is, they don't care about daylight savings. So it's like this whole readjustment to like this new time. But this is also the first year I don't have an animal. My dog recently passed away. So it's like this is the first year that I've been in like completely outside of it all and not having this like little creature that's like governing my time. But I still feel the the weight of the entire collective that's affected by this time change. And it just goes to show that it's like, this isn't about me. It's not about you. It's not about any particular person. We're all doing this for everyone. And it just like really struck me this week. Like I feel that the weight of like the confusion of like, what time is it? What is going on? Like,
Mhm.
it's just proof. We're all in this for something that is like so much larger than us.
So true. I love that.
Yeah, time has been a really weird thing. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know what it is, but I've been sleeping until like 11 o'clock. Like, I never do that. So it's
you're
been,
feeling the exhaustion.
yeah. And it doesn't have anything to do with like what's going on in my life because my life is very, the days are all kind of the same. So, yeah, it's really weird, but
That is weird.
it's
Did you know
it's so much bigger.
there's more heart attacks and car accidents the day after daylight saving time?
Oh, really? That is bizarre.
Yeah, it's a weird correlation.
I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole on that because I am like obsessed with anything to do with time, and I just have always thought daylight savings. Like, what are they like? They say it's like good for the farmers. Farmers are working with animals. They
Yeah.
don't know what time it is. Like, that doesn't make any
Yeah, they're
sense.
following the sun.
Yeah, that does not make any sense. Like, what is going on here?
What is the real reason?
Yeah.
Funny.
Okay. So I'm number four, right?
Correct.
Okay. The correction of fear is your responsibility. When you ask for release from fear, you are implying that it is not. You should ask instead for help in the conditions that have brought the fear about. These conditions always entail a willingness to be separate. At that level, you can help it. You are much too tolerant of mind wandering and are passively condoning your mind's miscreations. The particular result does not matter, but the fundamental error does. The correction is always the same. Before you choose to do anything, ask me if your choice is in accord with mine. If you are sure that it is, then there will be no fear.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, just to put it simply, that's just going back to your own center. It's like, where are you moving from and how are you moving forward? I don't really have a whole lot to add to that one.
Yeah, it's just kind of like mindfulness, having a daily mindfulness practice until it just becomes a natural state of being. Um, I know for me, I practiced mindfulness probably for like 5 years before it just became a part of my life to where I don't even necessarily need to sit down every day and force myself into mindfulness for 30 minutes. It took a while, but after 5 years of practicing it as often as I could, it finally came to the point I noticed this year, like these past 6 months, where I'm just in a constant state of mindfulness. And when I do lose myself, it's not for very long. It's not for as long as it used to be. And so I think that it's very, very important. It's one of the most boring forms of meditation because you're literally just sitting there. You're like, I'm aware of this thought. I'm aware of the wind on my skin. I'm aware of the ground under me or whatever. It's like literally just being aware of everything. But it's like, I believe it's the most important meditation that you can possibly do because it truly is what brings you into your center. You know, we can do all these fancy meditations that bring you into the void or have these experiences with our chakras, which are important and valuable and beautiful. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that if we have those and then we don't just do like a plain, boring mindfulness meditation, we're kind of missing the point. We're not actually in our body. And I think that this paragraph is really speaking to just being in a consistent state of mindfulness so that we're aware at all times where our thoughts are going and what emotions that we're feeling so that we can choose if we want to believe them or not. And a lot of us are just not aware and we're miscreating and we don't even realize it. And then we get these reflections that we don't like and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. But it's because we're not mindful at all times of the day. We don't notice when we get pulled out of our center and we make a decision out of rage, or we make a decision out of jealousy, or we make a decision out of wanting to be good enough. So that's kind of what I got from it.
I would agree with that too, in the sense of you hear people talk about being all the time, and um, being is something that is difficult to understand unless you actually are being that. And it to to use what you've said in like to try to really understand that is it's that your being comes from it's like you all of those practices compounding, and then it's like you don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just becomes who you are. And that's like how you get into like the beingness and the right behaviors, because being is like behavior but like in motion. So it's like to be and in your beingness take years of practice and getting to that point and the mindfulness, because like our main role is like to watch the mind. Like we're here to simply observe the mind. And you can't really get into a state of like pure grounded being unless you are, it's in your mode of operation. Your main mode of functioning is like I just naturally watch my mind. I don't have to sit down and force myself to do these boring meditations. It's like that's how you build the foundation of beingness. So I love that.
It is. It does take, I mean, just for I mean, everyone's different, but for me, it really did take like 5 years of just doing those boring meditations. And sometimes I'm like, why am I even doing this? This is like not even doing anything. But it's because I couldn't see that compound yet. Um, yeah. But once you see it compounded and you're like, oh shoot, like this whole time I thought I was doing nothing and I was doing everything.
Yeah, and the compound effect, it doesn't show up for a long time. And that is what I think a lot of people miss in like any of these teachings, is that it's not just, start doing this and like in 3 months your life is going to be completely different. Like that's so completely unrealistic. But when it finally does show up, it's like the whole thing then makes sense. You're like, oh, I I know now like why it has taken this long. Because you can see all of the different like processes along the way. The different cycles that you yourself go through where you're irritated by it, where you're pissed off at it, where you love it. You have a couple weeks where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting it. And then like the next week it's like, I hate this, it's not doing anything. So You have to go through the whole spectrum.
That's so true. I was laughing the other day. Um, I was writing out just like a letter, and part of the letter, I just said, I was like, I can't believe I thought of that. Wow. But I was like, there's no Ozempic pill for unworthiness. Like, you just have to sit with your unworthiness and observe your unworthiness and have compassion for your unworthiness every time it comes up until it goes away. Like, there's no quick fix to getting rid of it. It's just
You
something that you
can't
have to
fake
sit with.
compassion. Like
Yeah.
that, there's no way to fake that. You cannot fake, you can like look at me how compassionate I'm being towards myself, but it's like if you're not actually being compassionate towards yourself, you're not, and it's like that, the being, like are you being compassionate? It's like, mm, and then you have to look at that. You have to look at that, like, why can I not fully dive into this self-compassion?
Yeah.
But
It's like a whole thing. And the more you observe, just like the deeper and deeper you get, and the more you realize, like, shoot, like, I really do have the whole universe inside me. Like, I used to read little quotes about that on Instagram and be like, that sounds stupid. But now I'm just like, uh, no, like, but for real though. Like,
yeah,
it just keeps going and going and going.
love that.
So crazy. Okay. Oh, it's my turn to read. Fear is always a sign of strain, arising whenever what you want conflicts with what you do. This situation arises in two ways. First, you can choose to do conflicting things, either simultaneously or successively. This produces conflicted behavior, which is intolerable to you because of the part of the mind that wants to do something else is outraged. Second, you can behave as you think you should, but without entirely wanting to do so. This produces consistent behavior, but entails great strain. In both cases, the mind and the behavior are out of accord, resulting in a situation in which what you are doing, what you do not wholly want to do. This arouses a sense of coercion that usually produces rage, and projection is likely to follow. Whenever there is fear, it is because you have not made up your mind. Your mind is therefore split, and your behavior inevitably becomes erratic. Correcting at the behavioral level can shift the error from the first to the second type, but will not obliterate the fear. I think this speaks a lot to our habits and addictions, and how I think we've talked about this previously about how, like, you can just switch from one addiction to the other, but did you actually do anything? Like, you can say that you're going to give up caffeine, but then you're just going to start eating more sugar. So it's like you can't force yourself into a behavioral change. It has to be something that occurs naturally from within because you are becoming more healthy inside. And so then naturally, these things just won't appeal to you anymore. Like, for example, when I first um had like my first like major big awakening back in 2020, I immediately gave up caffeine, sugar, TV, alcohol, and I went raw vegan. So I was like doing five things I gave everything up all at once, and I like forced myself into this grand change. And it was almost like I was constantly at war within myself still, because I wanted to have a drink, but then I wouldn't allow myself, or I wanted to watch a TV show, but I wouldn't allow myself. So what I found was it was out of control and out of fear, for a fear of not being spiritual enough. and out of the need to control my physical reality so that I could appear more spiritual to myself, so that I could appease the fear I had of not being good enough, not being spiritual enough, or whatever. And it didn't last very long. It lasted like 6 months. And then my husband had like a really bad, huge accident that took a lot of toll on me. And I didn't have that healthy foundation to land on in my internal world. So I just like immediately went back to all of my vices because I never actually created a sustainable way of existing in the new behaviors I wanted to cultivate. I just forced myself into them, but there was no stability. So as soon as something in my external shook me out of it, I immediately went back to everything because I never actually healed the parts of myself that were addicted to drinking or that were addicted and wanting to numb out and watch TV. Like I tried to avoid the actual internal work and just like make it look better on the outside. Um, so I think this is just talking to like learning how to have compassion and forgiveness to ourselves when we do behave in ways that conflict with how we want to behave. And the more we can have compassion and forgiveness in those places rather than control and manipulation, the more they'll just naturally fall away, because then they did just start to naturally fall away in the past couple of years. Like I don't really drink anymore. I don't really watch too much TV anymore. Like they're just naturally fading out of my life because the part of me that was addicted to those things is healing. And so it doesn't even appeal to me any longer.
I love that example because it's so true in that like no matter what we're going to have these behaviors, it's like the way that we express our behaviors. But it goes back to the mindfulness thing of like the fact that you could actually observe that when you had this thing happen with your husband and you could look at that and say, oh, I'm doing this totally wrong. I'm trying to force myself. That's what the mindfulness is all about. It's like, okay, these behaviors that I have, they're not actually wrong. They don't mean anything about me. This is just me trying to navigate a new plane of reality and, being the kind of person that I assume you to be, just because I am as well. It's like diving in as hard as you can and like, going full bore with the whole thing and then it's like, oh, that's actually not the way either. But you have to commit to those behaviors, even though they're not like the greatest, but it's the commitment to them, it's the compassion for them, and it's like, oh, that's part of the process. That's part of the whole thing. It's like even with me this week, I've been sleeping so late, and there's a part of me that's like, are you dipping into like old behaviors that are not good for you? Or is this like something I'm moving through? Like, I have had those feelings of like kind of judgment about it. Um, but I think I'm more in a place now where it's like, okay, these terrible behaviors are happening. But then again, who's to say what time I wake up has anything to do with my value? And what if this is part of the process? What if this, what if I just have to have a couple of weeks where I'm like, kind of not having some great behaviors because it's something more for me to observe. And so it's like when these behaviors come up, we can't really just automatically go into correction mode, like, oh, this is bad, I gotta fix it. It's like when you really let them play out, um, like even the past like 5 nights, I'm like, well, if I'm gonna be sleeping in so late, I guess I'm gonna drink coffee at like 6 p.m. So it's like I can really get to a point where if there's a bad behavior happening, I'm gonna like make it real bad because I want to get as much as I can out of it. Because I know this isn't forever. I'm not always going to be this person. Like, next week's gonna happen and I'm gonna be totally different.
That's so true. I love that. And it's almost like there's like an energy inside that wants to play itself out through these behaviors. And when we try to control and stifle them, we're also stifling that energy and keeping it trapped in our body. Whereas when we can just like, as long as we're not harming ourselves and others, of course, but sometimes when we can like just let these energies play out with like a loving and compassionate awareness around them, the energy gets to like move and leave our body. And then, like you said, next week it's like, meh, I'm good. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. I love the idea of like playing with toxicity too, because even from the world of like weightlifting, like the point of lifting weights is to like tear down your muscles so that they rebuild and, whatever, that whole thing. But like in a sense, that is like a toxin, that's a form of toxicity. And so if you have these little toxins that come up in your life, like maybe lean into that because what if it's those little toxins needed? I used to be a freak about what I was eating. Like, oh, I can't eat that. There's like there's pesticides or whatever. Like I just was crazy. And looking at it now, it's like, yeah, all of those things are happening in the world, but what if my experience, what if me, this centralized point, what if I need like this medicinal toxin? What if I need to cycle in some sort of strange environmental toxin that I need to like push through some sort of evolution? I don't know. I don't know what's happening, and I don't know, none of us know. And so why are we like pushing away any sign of like negative behavior or, anything that's toxic? It's like I think all of us could say that we have learned the most from our most toxic relationships. So like we have to kind of like lean into the poison. Like I think about what is the symbol, like the skull and crossbones? Like
Mhm.
I feel like that was given to poison, but I think there's more there. I don't know. This is just like I love symbols and I love symbology and all of that. And like I think that it has to do with that, like the toxin is necessary because the cross is like it's like that axial tilt, but then it's like tilted. And so that
Mm.
creates those, hourglasses. And
Yeah.
so, what if there is something needed with that, with the toxin, with any sort of toxicity? Like maybe it isn't, obviously a lot of toxin can kill you, but what about like a little bit?
Yeah. Like just giving into our shadow a little bit, because those are the parts of ourselves that are screaming for love and attention. And when we
Yeah.
keep them in the background and try to ignore them, they get all deformed and rabid and weird. But when we bring them into the forefront and give them our attention and love, we transform them into something beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think it's so necessary. So necessary to lean into what we might consider as bad behaviors.
I agree. Yeah, I'm gonna think about that for a while because I totally agree with that. And I love that perspective of like I never even thought about that being like the hourglass, but it totally is. It's
Yeah,
like
because
it,
it's a cross that's just tilted.
yeah, it's like
And we see the cross
the,
as holy, but why wouldn't it still be holy on its side?
yeah, because our shadow is always the portal to deeper transformation. And yeah, I think sometimes acting from our shadow in a conscious way, not in an unconscious way where it's like this deformed, rabid creature that's lashing out because it feels unloved. But when we can bring our shadow into the light and act from our shadow in a conscious way to where we're not hurting anyone and we're not hurting ourselves, I think that can be very transformative in the deepest of ways.
Yeah, and if you think about the X, the skull and the crossbones, like the X portion of it, like X in the Roman numeral is also 10, which is like ones and zeros. And you think about like binary code, it's all the same. So it just shows that that is part of the necessary process because you can't have the whole, 100011 or whatever the without the X, but
Mm.
that includes the toxin. I don't know. I'm done with that.
I like what you're saying though, but yes. Awesome. I like that perspective. Okay. Is it my turn or your? I think it's your turn.
It is possible to reach a state in which you bring your mind under my guidance without conscious effort, but this implies a willingness that you have not developed as yet. The Holy Spirit cannot ask more than you're willing to do.
Oh,
What's happening?
Zyla, I think your side is glitching. Are you there, Silo? I think your audio is glitching, Zylo. Oh,
She's on mute.
sorry. Thank you. It was just, I don't know if you were trying to talk, but it was like making like robotic sounds.
You have input? I'd love to hear what you say.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I think her side's glitching.
Okay. Let's see. There is no strain in doing God's will as soon as you recognize that it is also on your own. The lesson here is quite simple, but particularly apt to be overlooked. I will therefore repeat it, urging you to listen. Only your mind can produce fear. It does so whenever it is conflicted in what it wants, producing inevitable strain because wanting and doing are discordant. This can be corrected only by accepting a unified goal. Um, yeah, I don't really have anything to add about that. It's just kind of like going over what we've been saying already.
Mm, I agree.
I do
Okay.
like the part that says there is no strain in doing God's will as soon as you recognize that it is also your own. Because
Mm,
there is that aspect of strain, like when you're moving with force, it's like everything is so hard and you're using so much energy. But when you're moving in that like very perfect, clear state, it's like there's no strain there. It's like everything just becomes effortless. It just becomes who you're being.
I agree with that. I like to like channel the energy of a river when I think about like being in that natural state of flow with God's will. Because like the river isn't trying to move forward, it's not forcing or pushing or straining itself down the river, it's just flowing forward. It just naturally is what it does.
And what is a river? Why are they always flowing? Like where's it all coming from? It's just always in a constant state of flow.
Yeah. And water kind of also represents, to me, anyways, water represents like the divine mother, just like
Yeah.
a body of water. And so if you take that representation of like the water being the divine mother, and then it's just like flowing forward naturally, moving through obstacles and over dams and whatever, it's just so effortless. And so when we can learn to surrender to that energy and just allow the mother to flow through us, our life will also become a effortless state of forward motion.
Yeah. And that, taking those years of mindfulness practices and moving into the who you're being, it just becomes who you're being. And then, there eventually will be a point where it's like these kinds of teachings, maybe we'll put them down for a couple of years because we'll be in some sort of homeostasis and then, come back to them. We never really know. It's just surrendering to that. It's like maybe we'll get to a point where we don't need this anymore in our state of being, but it's like right now, this is what we're doing right now, and surrendering to that and being in the beingness of that. So
Yeah, all we can ever do.
yeah.
I love that. Okay. I'll read the next one. The first corrective step in undoing the error is to know first that the conflict is an expression of fear. Say to yourself that you must somehow have chosen not to love, or the fear could not have arisen. Then the whole process of correction becomes nothing more than a series of pragmatic steps in a larger process of accepting the atonement as the remedy. These steps may be summarized in this way. 1, know first that this is fear. 2, fear arises from lack of love. 3, the only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. 4, perfect love is the atonement. Yeah, I think that the only thing I'm receiving from this is simply just that accepting responsibility for what is arising within us and then creating like a compassionate space from within in order to hold that knowing so that the fear can dissolve. And then inevitably, if you're cultivating that space of compassion from within, that's what will replace the fear that dissolves or leaves, or kind of the fear alchemizes and turns into compassion or turns into more love. Yeah, that's kind of all I'm getting from that is taking responsibility so that you can properly alchemize it.
I love that. I love the responsibility aspect. So I think that's the biggest key in like all of this is the personal responsibility. So it doesn't matter like how much how, we can read all the books, we can do all the things, but if you're not taking that personal responsibility and that personal accountability for how you're viewing yourself or how you're viewing a situation, it's like it doesn't matter. So and that is like the shadow. It's like being very real with yourself. It's not easy to take personal responsibility and accountability all the time. If it was, we would all be doing
Yeah,
it. So
that's so true. That's like the number one thing that completely transformed my relationship with my husband was just learning how to take full ownership and responsibility for what's arising within me and then communicating from that space. Because before him, I was just in a bunch of like toxic relationships with like the screaming and the fighting and the blaming and the cheating and all of the crazy, most toxic things. And so when I got together with my husband, that's kind of how the beginning of our relationship was like we were both giving into those like toxic behaviors. And we were just like running in circles with all of our issues. We weren't really getting anywhere until I just decided like no matter what, I am taking personal responsibility for everything that arises in my relationship. I mean, of course, unless he was like actually like physically abusing me or something terrible, which he's never done. So I'm not saying to do that, but Like any argument that we had, I have just the past couple years, I have decided I am taking 100% full accountability and responsibility for this issue, even if my ego doesn't understand how it's my fault and I want to blame him and it's his fault. And what's your, I'm innocent, whatever. That has been the one thing that has just completely transformed our relationship into something so loving and respectful and mutually beneficial and like all of the things that you want out of a relationship. Um, yeah, so I'm just like really big on taking responsibility for everything because that's the only true way you're going to transform your life. It sucks. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. You're going to spend a lot of nights crying. You're going to spend a lot of nights writing in your journal all the things that like all the things when I would get angry that I would want to say to my husband to blame him for the problem. I would have to like get myself to go sit down and just write them all out in a journal. It's like I refuse to say this to him because it's not true, but I am going to go and I'm going to write it all out and I'm going to be angry and I'm going to listen to angry music and I'm going to cry and I'm going to let myself have my moment of blaming him and talk to her about it or whatever. And then I would make the decision after I purged all of it to be like, okay, now I've done what I needed to do. I'm coming back in my center and I'm attacking this from a way that puts zero of the blame on him. And something magical happened when I started doing that. He started doing the same thing. And so now we just have this like beautiful, healthy relationship where like yeah we have disagreements but they don't turn into what they used to turn into and we're able to like move through it and actually just like go even deeper into connection with each other through the process. Like something that was once so like blow up explosive is now like a portal to deeper intimacy.
That's so beautiful. And you're not avoiding those feelings, you're not avoiding the feelings of blame. You're not avoiding the anger that you feel and all of that. It's like when you're actually going through all of those things, but you're doing it with yourself rather than putting it on him. And that's so beautiful because it's like we're not getting to a point where we're just making it so those things never happen. That's unrealistic. It's totally unrealistic. So, and that's where the compassion comes in. It's like you obviously have had compassion for yourself in those situations where it's like you're so angry and you're so hateful and you have those, the journaling and the anger and whatever, but it's like, the only way through it is to go into it. We're not getting to a point where those thoughts and feelings don't come up because we'll have those for lifetimes. It's what it is.
Yeah, it's just like can we accept that they're here and
Yeah.
move through them with grace.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. It's still hard to do, but it's just once you start living life that way, just taking that ownership, you start to truly feel and understand your own power. And so it almost feels like a slight to yourself to go back and like give your power away by blaming someone else.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's so crucial too. Like, I'm not in a relationship right now, so I don't have someone to like bounce those things off of. And I'm at a point in my life where I'm just like, I don't care, whatever. But like eventually, it would be nice to get to a point where it's like to be able to do that kind of work with somebody else. I think it's really inspiring that, you do that and then it's like he started doing the same thing. And it's like that is just the proof in that when you are the one that takes accountability and you're the one that changes, the people around you can't help but change. And you're not doing it by like, you should change, you should go journal about this, you should do this on your own. You're like, you're taking the accountability and doing it yourself and saying, you know, that this is what I'm doing. And then just by the natural state of, you know, the flow, it's like he goes into that same thing. And it's just beautiful to see in action. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
All right, number 8. I have emphasized that the miracle or the expression of atonement is always a sign of respect from the worthy to the worthy. The recognition of this worth is reestablished by the atonement. It is obvious then that when you're afraid, you have placed yourself in a position where you need atonement. You have done something loveless, having chosen without love. This is precisely the situation for which the atonement was offered. The need for the remedy inspired its establishment. As long as you recognize only the need for the remedy, you will remain fearful. However, as soon as you accept the remedy, you have abolished the fear. This is how true healing occurs. So as soon as you accept the remedy, the need for the remedy is inspired by the establishment. So in accepting that you don't actually need a remedy is the true healing is what that's saying.
Mm.
So I love that part that says it is obvious then that when you're afraid, you have placed yourself in a position where you need an atonement. So it's like we don't actually need the atonement. It's just our mind telling us we need that. But when we're operating out of those fear patterns, then we feel like we need something. We feel like we're looking for something to heal us or clear us or whatever. But it's like as soon as you accept that none of that is even real, that it's like that's the true healing. That's what actually is the clearing. So
That's true. And it like happens in an instant.
yeah, that's all I have for that.
Like the acceptance of the atonement kind of it happens instantaneously. Like as soon as you accept it, you're cleared. But because we're not perfect and we're not always in that centered state. Am I breaking up?
A little bit. Yeah.
Oh no. Oh, you're frozen.
Frozen, you're frozen. It says the little bars are red. I don't know.
Hello?
Hi. I don't know what's happening. Okay,
Oh,
you're
I can
back.
hear you now. You're back. I
Okay.
don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't either. It like totally blanked out. I'm like, is it just me? I don't know.
Mine did that too. And I was like, maybe if I move, it'll come back. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What was I saying? Oh, just like it's almost like that acceptance of the atonement happens in an instant. But then, we're human, we're not perfect. Then we leave that space and then we require the atonement again. And when we require the atonement, it's because we're not in the center. And then all the atonement does is bring us back to center, which is our natural state. So if we're ever in a state of needing the atonement, it's because we have left the center.
And I would assume as well, those points where you find when you come back to the center and you find that atonement and you feel that state, because it's a feeling. It's not, it's not just a mind thing, it's a feeling. It's a full body, like I'm in the center. It's like those little bits of like every time you feel that and then you get used to that, then it's easier for you to move yourself into that because you know what the feeling feels like. I think
Mhm.
that, like, when it comes to wanting a life that's more joyful or, more happy, but you're not doing anything or you're not feeling any joy, you're not like, sometimes you have to watch a funny cat video or something, like to really just make yourself laugh because then you're actually feeling that feeling of joy. So it's like when you feel that and you know what it feels like, then you can easier slip into that feeling.
That's true, because we can't really bring ourselves into something when we don't know what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. And the atonement would be like a felt sense. So yeah, love that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, the last paragraph. Perfect. Everyone experiences fear, yet it would take very little right thinking to realize why fear occurs. Few appreciate the real power of the mind, and no one remains fully aware of it all the time. However, if you hope to spare yourself from fear that there are some things you must realize and realize fully, the mind is very powerful and never loses its creative force. It never sleeps. Every instant it is creating. It is hard to recognize that thought and belief combine into a power surge that can literally move mountains. It appears at first glance that to believe such power about yourself is arrogant, but that is not the real reason you do not believe it. You prefer to believe that your thoughts cannot exert real influence because you are actually afraid of them. This may ally awareness of the guilt, but at the cost of perceiving the mind as impotent. If you believe that what you think is ineffectual, you may cease to be afraid of it, but you are hardly likely to respect it. There are no idle thoughts. All thinking produces form at some level. Um, Everyone experiences fear. You know, I love this to close it all out because it's kind of like a recap of what we've kind of been talking about, or at least it circles back to the beginning of just like mindfulness and how truly, truly, truly important it is to bring awareness to all of our thoughts. But that's all. Like you said, that's all we really have to do is bring awareness to it because our awareness is the light of God. And when thoughts are in the dark, in the shadow, they're kind of controlling and creating our reality from the background, and we don't even realize it. Whereas when we can just simply bring our awareness to thoughts, even though they may seem scary, we neutralize them instantly because our awareness is the light and we're casting a light on the dark and it instantly neutralizes it. But the reason we don't do that, like, oh, if it's that easy, why don't we all do that? Because, like it's saying, we're afraid of our thoughts. Because sometimes our thoughts can seem like super dark and intense and cruel and hateful, and we don't want to believe that we could ever think something like that. And so we just rather ignore them instead or push them to the side, like, oh, I don't really think that. But like we're giving our power away when we do that. We're giving the power our thoughts have away, and we're just allowing them to uh, create our reality from the background. Whereas when we can create this space of compassion for ourselves and truly bring all of our thoughts into the light, even the ugly ones, even the uncomfortable ones, even the hateful ones towards ourselves or others, that's where like real transformation occurs. Um, we have to be really brave and courageous because some of our thoughts are so creepy crawly. But they aren't actually us. They're just manifestations of stored energy in the body that we haven't processed yet. So
Yeah.
all thoughts are just messengers. They aren't truth.
When you were saying that the when you shine the light on that and it that's like the light of God and it neutralizes, made me think of like when there's like a cloud or like it's really foggy and then you see the sun poke through and then the cloud just like disappears. Like that, I think that's such a
Mm.
perfect example of like thoughts can be like clouds.
Mm.
Because, even in terms of like weather patterns, like it's our thoughts can very much be like that. And weather patterns are really just they're like a manifestation of like hot and cold and movement. And the atmosphere is basically just water. So it's like when we're confused or whatever, that's kind of like the fog. But it's like as soon as the sun comes out and it shines it on that and it totally neutralizes that fog, it's like then you can actually see clearly. And then what can happen, what happens on a bright sunny day? It's like everything is like growing and vibrant. And so like when you can see clearly and you have like that everything is neutralized. I love
Mm.
that. I haven't really thought about that of like that being the light of God is like when you actually observe something, but that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I love that visual. That was such a beautiful visual that you created. And it's the perfect visual for that. Um, yeah, because it's almost like when we observe something, we're at that pinpoint in the center between the top and the bottom. And so because we are choosing to be in that pinpoint, we're opening ourselves up for the light of God to stream through onto the false illusionary world.
Yeah, and also, when you're sometimes like if you're on a flight, you can be like above the cloud level, and that you see like the whole level of it and you're above it. I think that's also like such a perfect visual too of like when we have like bizarre weather patterns, it's like it's just kind of resting along that like certain point. Like where I live, it's like I live in a valley, it's surrounded by mountains. So you can see like the line of where like the snow is falling like really high up at the top. And so like the mountains will have like the snow on the top and then the bottom is lower. And it's like you can see like that atmospheric line. And I think that our thought processes are a lot like that, where it's like when you get like too involved in like the craziness of the mind, it's like creating this haze like over, oh, this is interesting. I've never thought about this, but my city that I live in Salt Lake City. So it's like we get this thing that's called like an inversion, where like all of the pollution like gets trapped. And then the only way to like clear it out is if we have like either a snowstorm or a rainstorm. And it's like when you think about that and as like the Great Mother, it's like the cleansing has to come through to like clear out all of that pollution. So I'm like
Yeah, that's true.
viewing my city completely differently now.
You're like, wow. Yeah, that's a really beautiful and perfect visual. Because it's almost like it's that fog and it gets created like around our crown chakra, which is
Yeah.
our like connection to the divine. And when we're in the chatter, in the noise, we think that's all there is this like hazy, crazy. But then whenever we choose to like rise above to is that like our star chakra, like right above the crown?
Yeah. Like the little Sims like plumb bob thingy.
Yeah, then we can kind of see it from that connected space and see we can see the ring of confusion, but then we can see everything else as well.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's go to the lessons. I lost my spot. I don't want to lose where we're at. Okay. Um, for those of y'all watching the replay, if you go to back to, I think the screen where it says text, does it say workbook for students?
Yeah, workbook for students.
Yep, we're going to the workbook for students and we're on lesson 7, right? What study did I see? Oh no, we're on lesson 6.
Okay.
I am upset because I see something that is not there. Lesson 6. The exercises with this idea are very similar to the preceding ones. Again, it is necessary to name both the form of upset, anger, fear, worry, depression, and so on, and the perceived source very specifically for any application to the idea. For example, I am angry at blank because I see something that is not there. I am worried about blank because I see something that is not there. Today's idea is useful for application to anything that seems to upset you and can profitably be used throughout the day for that purpose. However, the 3 or 4 practice periods which are required should be preceded by a minute or so of mind searching, as before, and the application of the idea to each upset thought uncovered in the search. Again, if you resist applying the idea to some upsetting thoughts more than to others, remind yourself of the 2 cautions stated in the previous lesson. There are no small upsets. They are all equally disturbing to my peace of mind. And I cannot keep this form of upset and let the others go. For the purpose of these exercises, then, I will regard them all as the same. Yeah, I like this because it almost like causes you to go deeper into what's arising. Because it is true that, like, at the surface, we could think that we're mad because someone cut in front of us at the grocery store. But really, it's so much deeper than that. Because if we were in a state of forgiveness and love, then it wouldn't even bother us. We'd just be like, oh, whatever. Sure, it was rude. I wouldn't have done that. But I forgive them. It's not that big of a deal. We're going to get through the grocery line either way. But it's like when we're in the cloud, when we're in the fog, and we're lost in all of our fears and worries and traumas, um, we see the world from that lens. And so then when someone cuts us off in the grocery store, we're like, ah, that was so rude and disrespectful and blah, blah, blah. And we're kind of like replaying all the other times in our lives that we've been disrespected.
I also like that it says there are no small upsets. They are all equally disturbing to my peace of mind because that is so true. I find myself like more annoyed and whatever when it comes to like something that's really small like that. Um, I don't know. I'm just notorious for like making a big deal out of nothing. So
Sometimes you just have to let yourself do it
yeah, it could
and
be
observe
just
it.
like the smallest thing, but then if there's like a real issue, then I'm like, okay, it's, I can handle this. But like the small ones, it's like not so much.
You're like, I can't do this. Not again. I know I used to have like insane road rage, which is hilarious. Looking back on it, I'm just like, how funny. But like for most of my driving life, I had like the worst road rage of all time. And it would just be over silly stuff, like things that don't even matter. Like, and now when I drive around, I always get excited when somebody like cuts me off or I don't know, does something rude. And I notice that it doesn't trigger me. I get excited. I'm like, celebrating. And I'm like, wow, something that used to like send me into like a spiral of rage. I'm like laughing and like celebrating.
Mhm. That's
Ah,
funny.
so funny.
I have found myself to be road ragey as well, which I always felt really embarrassed about because when I was growing up, like my dad was really like road ragey, and it would just be so embarrassing. Like me and my brothers in the car were just like, ah. And then
Yeah.
like when I started driving, I like became that exact same thing. And then I'm like, how embarrassing. But but it's also like, yeah, I'm gonna have compassion for myself. Like we all end up being our parents from, you know, for one reason or another. So it is what it is.
Seriously. One time I was in the car with my dad, with my sister when we were younger, and someone cut him off on the highway and he followed them home. He was supposed to be taking us to gymnastics practice. And instead, he got so angry, he followed these people to their house. And me and my sister were just like in the back seat, like, oh my God, this is the most embarrassing thing that could ever happen to us.
I know I'm like feeling the embarrassment because I'm like, oh my God, that's so my dad too.
But then he like got to their house and like slowly just like drove by and looked at them and then kept going. I was like, what was the point of that?
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So funny. Humans are so funny.
Weird.
This was so fun. This was a good one.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun too. Glad to be back.
Me
So,
too. Thank you for being here.
yeah, and I look forward to the next one. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And thank you everyone watching the replay. Um, yeah, leave any comments or thoughts down below. I'd love to read them. Yeah, I'll talk to y'all next week.
Hey, see ya.
Bye.
Bye.